Coming up on Diverse Long Island, a spree of possible gang-related shootings in Nassau and Suffolk. Is enough being done to combat groups like the Bloods, Crips, and MS-13? And a Nassau cop charged with assaulting a young man during a traffic stop. A look at the incident that was caught on camera and the police rally for the officer that's rubbed some people the wrong way. Plus, kicking racism to the curb, Brazil's efforts to create an atmosphere of equality at this year's World Cup. That and more next. Welcome to this edition of Diverse Long Island. I'm Alicia Laventure. Gang violence rearing its ugly head in Nassau and Suffolk. The police investigating a series of shootings that may have been carried out by gang members. Violence often spikes during the summertime, and naturally, residents are concerned. Joining me now is former gang member turned community activist Sergio Argueta, who is director of the social work program at Adelphi University. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Alicia.
So it's estimated there are about 2,700 Crips and Bloods on the island. How big of a problem do we really have here with gangs, and is it getting worse?
Well, you know, for over a decade now, we've been talking about this very serious issue on Long Island. The census count that they, discussed in Newsday regarding gang membership was 2,700, not just Bloods and Crips, but, all identified gang members on Long Island. I think it's critical to really understand that number is really a underscore, if you will, as far as what the real issue is. These are identified gang members once they've been identified, once they've been arrested. The bulk of gang members, and a number of them have not been identified. And what we're talking about are a lot of young people that are joining gangs, particularly at the ages of 13, 14, and 15. Mm-hmm. So, we have a very serious issue. We've been losing young people. Countless lives have been impacted by this, and communities have been devastated.
Now, Nassau County recently made a controversial decision to eliminate POPs, problem-oriented police officers. They're plainclothes officers, now they're uniformed. Several lawmakers and community groups are trying to get this decision reversed. What do you think about this?
Well, some people will. There was a time where I never thought I'd be on Channel 12 talking about the importance of maintaining police officers and how taking police officers out of the equation would be an issue. Nonetheless, here we are. Problem-oriented policing in the communities of Uniondale, Roosevelt, through the 1st Precinct have really lent themselves to building collaborative efforts where officers are engaging community members, not just responding to 911 calls. We firmly believe that this has really helped us in building community and allowing individuals to community-based organizations that work with law enforcement and intervening and preventing, not just responding to the emergency. We've had law enforcement officers engaging, religious leaders, going to actual service and working with individuals after that, or, walking into businesses and sort of having discussions with law enforcement officers. It was the idea, it's the closest we've ever come to having an actual law enforcement officer walking the beat, getting to know the community and becoming ingrained in being a part of the community as opposed to just policing it. We think that that it's a bad call to remove this unit from really being able to engage with members in the community and being able to lower crime rates and things of that nature.
Now, officials in both counties say crime is actually going down, but residents in communities, as you mentioned, Central Islip, Huntington, Wyandanch, Freeport, Uniondale, they're concerned. And apart from this, what other steps can be taken to eliminate that fear that they feel?
Well, so 2 things. The first part of your question is, why would elected officials, knowing and seeing that crime is actually on the way down, now decide to change what's actually proving effective and what's actually working? And they say that they're going to keep an eye on these trends, and if there's an uptick, then they will reconfigure. Looking at a spreadsheet and not understanding that this has real implications, and as a result we will lose a larger number of particularly young people. It's devastating. Regarding the violence in particular communities, whether it's the corridor communities, Hempstead, Uniondale, Roosevelt, Lakeview, Newcastle, Westbury, and Nassau, or Huntington Station, and a number of the communities you just mentioned, it's critical that we come to understand that gang violence and gang activity is merely a symptom of us failing our kids, and social institutions that aren't doing right by our children. In these areas, I mean, Long Island is one of the most segregated suburbs in the entire country, and as a result, we have communities where there are no opportunities for kids, schools that are literally failing these children, high poverty areas where there are no resources, employment opportunities. What are kids supposed to do? And when we as a society fail to provide for them, they will look to provide for themselves. And oftentimes, gang membership provides a false sense of security. It's kind of difficult to tell young people that's not real security when they feel that they're going to get jumped on the way to and from school, when they're being beat up because of an accent or the fact that they don't speak a particular language. All of these things, marginalizing youth and oppressing them, is what really, exacerbates the issue.
Okay, thank you, Sergio. We'll be right back. When we return, a Nassau police officer facing assault charges following a traffic stop that was caught on camera. And at his arraignment, hundreds of officers rallied in his corner. Did they go over the line with this vocal show of support? Welcome back to Diverse Long Island. The Nassau police getting backlash after hundreds of off-duty officers rallied in support of a fellow cop accused of beating a young man during a traffic stop.
Vindicate Vinny! Vindicate Vinny!
The head of Nassau's PBA chanting the name of Officer Vincent LoGiudice following his arraignment. The veteran cop is charged with felony assault for allegedly beating 20-year-old Kyle Howell of Westbury. Surveillance shows Howell being hit repeatedly. The police union says the use of force was justified because Howell was trying to destroy evidence by eating a bag of marijuana. The alleged victim's attorney says the rally by the PBA was an act of intimidation.
If this was a group that large of individuals from the NAACP, I could guarantee you that that would have been shut down in a second.
You don't think you were given preferential treatment yesterday?
Absolutely not. We were there in full support of Vinny, and we continue to support Vinny.
LoGiudice pleaded not guilty and faces a maximum of 7 years in prison if convicted of the top charge. Now, this story generating a lot of debate and discussion. Joining me once again, community activist Sergio Argueta. Sergio, what do you think about this rally, and do you believe it was appropriate for those officers to show their support in that way?
Well, I mean, first off, I think this is an unfortunate incident. I think it's honestly a horrible incident. I think that anyone that looks at this issue and in hindsight can say everyone did exactly what they were supposed to do, you'd be foolish or ignorant to the devastation that these kinds of incidents actually generate and create. I was appalled to have seen really the injuries of this young man. Yet again, I understand that I wasn't there and I don't know the full story. But actually turning to my local news station and seeing a PBA president on top of a bench inside of a courthouse hosting a rally, it really set us back years and years in particular communities where a number of us are trying to strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and community. To see a young man of African American ethnicity who was visibly still suffering as a result of this assault that the district attorney is now saying is criminal, and then turning the camera and seeing hundreds of particularly male white officers sort of chanting and egging this on, as opposed to saying, wait a second, there was a different way by which they could have offered support. I don't think that was the proper venue or the proper means by which to do it. They could have done the exact same thing by showing up and being silent in their protest and holding their press conference outside the way any other group would have been allowed to do so.
Now, you work in the community and you founded an organization called Strong Youth, which helps to lead teens down the right path. How do you think a situation like this will impact a young person's willingness to trust and cooperate with the police?
That's probably what's most devastating, right? The fact that the grown-ups, the professionals, I commend Mr. Carver, he's the PBA president, does an admirable job at representing his union, but his actions have a ripple effect that transcend and go beyond his union. And it's critical for him and every other officer to understand that when they wear that uniform or when they are functioning their, performing their duties as a law enforcement officer, they work for the community, and they're supposed to be sort of engaging with the community. Unfortunately, in this instance, young people that may have seen something like this can sort of point a finger and say, you see how they act, you see how they are, and it just helps to, it just further polarizes the community as opposed to bridging the gap that currently exists.
Now, speaking of seeing, Nassau is developing a new dash cam and body camera program so that we can see more of what's happening. Do you think this sort of technology is the answer so prosecutors have the whole picture when a situation like this comes up?
Well, it's critically important that we start using technology that has proven fruitful throughout the United States of America in being able to stem the tide of these types of incidents. Fact of the matter is, on Long Island, we've had dozens, of exposés on a number of officers that do not do right by the badge. They do a dishonor. And unfortunately, time and time again, we find that, you have a union president that says things like, I stand behind them 100%, even in instances where it's difficult for any person to stand behind anyone 100%. None of these issues are as clear cut as individuals, sort of frame them to be. And as such, we need to be understanding and critical and understanding and thinking about the complexity of these issues. I commend the officers that have to, think on their feet, and they do risk their lives every single day. But when President Carver sort of complains that here the DA pressed charges without ever interviewing the officers. There's a number of officers that are investigated, and the charges are dropped when victims haven't been interviewed either way. So this is the kind of technology that can assist in making sure that we get the full story.
Thank you so much, Sergio. Long Islanders pleading with the president.
Obama, don't deport my mama.
A push to stop mass deportations on the island and across the U.S. This rally was held in Brentwood. Immigrant activists and community members calling on President Obama to make a change in immigration policy. Since the president took office, 2 million undocumented immigrants have been deported. The demonstrators say blaming Republicans isn't going to cut it. The NFL facing mounting political pressure to change a team name that many categorize as a racial slur.
Apache, Pueblo, Choctaw, Chippewa, and Crow. Underserved, struggling, resilient. Native Americans call themselves many things. The one thing they don't.
Native American tribes have been speaking out for decades, asking the Redskins name to be dropped. Now politicians are joining the fight. In late May, 50 U.S. senators signed a letter to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell demanding action on the issue. They say the league is on the wrong side of history. Redskins owner Daniel Snyder has repeatedly refused. He says the team name isn't a racial slur. Brazil trying to keep racism from rooting its ugly head during the World Cup. The hosts of the 2014 Cup started a campaign called We Are Equal to celebrate diversity and unity. Acts of racism at soccer stadiums in Brazil are not uncommon, despite the fact that the population is majority black or mixed race. According to FIFA rules, discrimination by players and fans is prohibited and could lead to suspension or expulsion from a stadium. A little gladiator from the island feeling the love. Isaiah Bird was born with no legs, and he's had his fair share of challenges in his young life. After News 12 aired his story of strength and determination, a lot of folks decided to step up and help him follow his dreams. Virginia Huey has the story you'll only see on 12.
Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise.
Beautiful words spoken by a wise woman who is already sorely missed. The world recently lost one of the great poets in Maya Angelou. The acclaimed writer died in late May at the age of 86. Angelou's poems have been called the anthems of African Americans. Her inspiring words and work will live on forever. Remember, you can always follow Diverse Long Island on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/DiverseLI. You can also follow us on Twitter. Our handle is #DiverseLI. That's all the time we have for this edition of Diverse Long Island. I'm Alicia Lavenger, and for all of us here at News 12, have a great weekend.